Are you okay, sir? Can you stand?
My leg, I can't. Please don't leave me here.
I'm not leaving. Give me your hand. The water! It's rising! Oh God, it's rising! Look at me, look at me. We go now or we don't go at all.
Gerald Hammond grabbed Byron's arm. His fingers dug in like a man drowning. 6 hours earlier, this very man had thrown a napkin in Byron's face, called him trash, got him fired.
Follow me quickly.
Byron whispered it. His phone was dead. No way to call his grandmother. No way to check on his sister in the hospital.
Please, please don't let go. I won't. Stay close.
Amidst the landslide and torrential rain, the black boy remained completely unfazed. He had no idea that this action would turn his life upside down. 6 hours earlier. Byron Taylor's alarm went off at 4 in the morning. No snooze, no second chance. He rolled off the thin mattress in the staff quarters behind the resort kitchen. The room smelled like grease and pine cleaner. He shared it with 2 other workers who were still asleep. He splashed cold water on his face from the utility sink. No hot water in the staff quarters. That was for the guests. He ate a stale bread roll from yesterday's service and pulled on his whites, the kitchen uniform with someone else's name stitched on the chest. The resort never bothered to order him a new one. 3 months on the job, and they still called him the new guy. Byron was 20 years old. He should have been in college. He had the grades. He had the scholarship. Full ride to state, environmental science. He had spent 4 years as a Boy Scout in these mountains, earned every badge, led every expedition. His troop leader once said Byron could find his way through these woods blindfolded. But that was before his mother died. Before his little sister Lily got diagnosed with a hole in her heart. Before college became a word that belonged to someone else's life. Lily was 9. She needed surgery, the kind that cost more than Byron would make in 10 years of washing dishes. Their grandmother, Edna, watched her at home, a 2-room apartment 40 miles from the resort, held together with duct tape and prayer. Edna was 68. Her knees gave out on stairs. Her hands shook when she poured Lily's medication. Every Friday, Byron wired his paycheck. Every Friday, it wasn't enough. He didn't complain. He couldn't afford to. The resort sat on the side of Mount Harlan, a luxury retreat for people who spent more on a single weekend than Byron earned in a year. Cedar walls, heated pools, a wine cellar with bottles older than his grandmother. Byron never saw any of it from the front. His world was the kitchen. Stainless steel counters, steam, the crash of plates, the narrow window above the dishwashing station. That was his only view of the dining room. Children his sister's age running around the lobby in brand new sneakers, while Lily couldn't walk to the bathroom without losing her breath. He never felt sorry for himself. He felt sorry for Lily. That afternoon, the resort buzzed with a different energy. The staff moved faster. The manager, Owen Reed, straightened his tie 3 times in 10 minutes. Someone important was coming. Gerald Hammond arrived at 4:15. 3 black SUVs, silver hair, charcoal overcoat, leather shoes that clicked against the marble floor. A face that had never heard the word no. Hammond owned Crestline Properties, 32 hotels, $6 billion in assets. He had booked the entire penthouse floor for the weekend. The bill for one night would cover Lily's surgery and leave change. Byron didn't know any of this. He was in the kitchen peeling carrots when Owen burst through the door. "Listen up." Owen clapped his hands. "Gerald Hammond is here. Crestline Properties. He owns resorts like this one for breakfast. Everything perfect. Everything fast. Nobody speaks to him unless spoken to. Nobody looks at him too long. And for God's sake," Owen pointed at Byron, "keep the kitchen staff out of sight. He doesn't want to see anyone who doesn't belong in the dining room." Byron kept peeling. The blade nicked his thumb. He didn't flinch. He called his grandmother on his break. Lily had thrown up twice that morning. The medication wasn't working anymore. Edna's voice cracked on the phone, the kind of crack that meant she'd been crying long before she picked up. "How much is the new prescription?" Byron asked. $400. The pharmacy won't do credit anymore." Byron closed his eyes. He had $62 in his account. Payday was Friday, 4 days away. "I'll figure it out, Grandma. Tell Lily I love her." He hung up, pressed his forehead against the cold tile wall, breathed. Then he went back to work. That evening, the kitchen was short 2 servers. A stomach bug had knocked out half the waitstaff. Owen pulled Byron aside. "You're serving tonight." "I'm a dishwasher, Mr. Reed. I've never—" "You have 2 hands and 2 legs. Table 12, Hammond's table. Don't speak unless spoken to. Don't make eye contact. Just set the plates down and disappear." Byron changed into a server's vest that hung loose on his shoulders. His hands were built for scrubbing pots, not balancing porcelain. Gerald Hammond sat at the center of a round table with 2 associates, men in suits who laughed at everything he said. A bottle of wine sat between them, worth more than Byron's monthly rent. Byron approached with the first course, seared scallops on a white plate. He set it down carefully. His hand was steady. Gerald didn't look up. He cut into the scallop, chewed once, and pushed the plate away. "Cold." "I'm sorry, sir. I'll have the kitchen—" "I didn't ask for an apology. I asked for hot food. Is that too complicated for you?" Byron took the plate back. The kitchen remade it in 4 minutes. He carried it out again, set it down, stepped back. Gerald cut into it, chewed, pushed it away. "Wrong sauce." "Sir, the chef confirmed it's the same recipe." "Do I look like I care what the chef confirmed?" Gerald set his fork down. "I'm telling you it's wrong. Are you going to stand there and argue, or are you going to fix it?" Byron took the plate back. 3rd time. The head chef slammed a pan on the counter when he saw Byron return. "Tell that man the sauce hasn't changed in 3 years." "He doesn't want to hear that, chef." "Then what does he want?" Byron didn't answer. He waited for the 3rd plate and carried it out. This time, Gerald didn't touch it. He looked up at Byron for the first time. His eyes moved over Byron's face, his ill-fitting vest, his kitchen-scarred hands. The way someone looks at a stain on a white tablecloth. "Get your manager." Owen appeared in seconds. Gerald leaned back in his chair. "Is this the best you have? A kitchen boy playing waiter?" Gerald gestured at Byron without looking at him. "He can't get a simple plate right. 3 times. And he argues, in front of my guests." "I apologize, Mr. Hammond. It won't—" "It already happened." Gerald reached into his jacket and pulled out a $100 bill. He held it up between 2 fingers, looked directly at Byron, and dropped it on the floor. "There, your tip for the evening. Pick it up." The table went silent. Gerald's associates stopped mid-drink. A woman at the next table turned to look. 2 servers behind Byron froze in place. Nobody said a word. "I said pick it up." Byron looked at the bill on the marble floor. $100. More than he'd make in 3 shifts of scrubbing pots. Enough for a quarter of Lily's prescription. He could feel the heat climbing his neck, the kind that made his jaw lock and his fists want to close. He thought about Lily, the way she wheezed when she tried to laugh, the way Edna had to carry her to the bathroom at night because her legs gave out, the way she asked every morning, "Is Byron coming home today?" Byron bent down. He picked up the bill. He folded it into his pocket without looking at it. Gerald smiled, not at Byron, past him, like he'd just confirmed something he already believed. "See?" Gerald said to his associates. "That's the thing about people like him. They always pick it up." One of them laughed, a short, ugly sound. The other stared at his wine glass. Byron walked back to the kitchen. His hands were shaking, not from fear, from the effort of keeping them open instead of closed. He stood by the dish station and pressed both palms flat against the steel counter. The metal was cold. He needed cold. $400 for Lily's prescription. 4 more nights of bending down. He could do it. For Lily, he could do anything. The kitchen door swung open. Owen stepped in. "Hammond wants a different server for the rest of the night." "Okay. And Byron?" Owen lowered his voice. "Don't take it personal. Men like him, they do this to everyone." Byron looked at Owen. "Do they?" Owen didn't answer. He straightened his tie and walked back to the dining room. The next morning, Byron was back in the kitchen at 4. Same routine, same stale roll. He figured the worst was over. Hammond had a different server now, Byron could stay invisible. He was wrong. At 10:15, Owen walked into the kitchen. He didn't make eye contact. That was the first sign. "Byron, my office, now." The office was a windowless room behind the front desk. Owen sat behind his desk. His hands were folded. His jaw was tight. "Mr. Hammond has made a formal complaint about last night. I know, he got a different server. I thought, he doesn't want you on the property." Owen said it flat, like reading a receipt. "He says your presence makes his guests uncomfortable. He's here for the full weekend. He's our biggest account this quarter." Byron felt the floor tilt beneath him. "Mr. Reed, I stayed in the kitchen all morning. I haven't gone near the dining room." "It doesn't matter. He knows you're here. That's enough for him." Owen opened a drawer and pulled out an envelope. "Your pay through yesterday. I'm sorry, Byron. I really am." "You're firing me." "I'm letting you go. There's a difference on paper." "There's no difference in my bank account." "My sister needs surgery, Mr. Reed. I told you that when I started." "I know. I've never been late, never complained, never stolen food. I pick up extra shifts every—" "I know, Byron." Owen's voice cracked on the name, just barely. Then he straightened. "But Hammond is a six-figure client. I can't lose him over a dishwasher." There it was, the math. A dishwasher weighed against a six-figure weekend. Byron had always known the equation. He just hadn't expected to hear it said out loud. He took the envelope, stood up. "Can I stay in the staff quarters tonight? The last shuttle left at 3. I don't have a car. I don't have cab fare for 40 miles. Owen hesitated. "One night, gone by 6 in the morning, before Hammond wakes up." "Before he wakes up." "That's the deal." Byron nodded. He didn't thank him. There was nothing to thank him for. Byron walked back to the staff quarters. The room was empty. The other workers were on shift. He sat on the edge of his mattress and opened the envelope. $312. After deductions, he needed $400 for Lily's prescription. He was $88 short. And now, he had no job. He picked up his phone, Edna's number. He stared at it for a long time. Then he called. "Hey, Grandma, how's Lily?" "She ate a little soup today, first time this week. How's work, baby?" Byron closed his eyes. "Work's good. Busy weekend, big clients." "You sound tired." "I'm fine, just a long shift. Tell Lily I'll be home soon." He hung up, set the phone face down on the mattress, put his head in his hands. Outside, the mountain was turning dark. Clouds had been building all afternoon, thick and low, the kind that sat on the peaks like a lid. Byron had seen clouds like that before. During his scouting years, his troop leader called them pressure caps. They meant bad weather, the kind that came fast and didn't apologize. But Byron wasn't thinking about the weather. He was thinking about $88. He didn't know that in a few hours, money would be the least of anyone's problems. It started with the rain. Byron lay on his mattress, staring at the ceiling. The envelope with $312 sat on the nightstand beside his dead phone. The rain hit the roof at 8:40. Not the soft mountain drizzle that rolled through most evenings. This was heavy, angry. Within minutes, the gutters overflowed and water pooled under the door. Byron sat up. He listened. 4 years of scouting had taught him the difference between a storm and a warning. This rain came in surges, hard for 10 seconds, pause, harder for 20. The rhythm was wrong. He walked to the window. The parking lot lights cast yellow circles on the asphalt. The water was already ankle-deep and moving, not standing, moving, downhill. That meant the ground above was saturated. That meant the soil couldn't hold anymore. Then he felt it, a vibration under his feet. Not thunder, lower, deeper, like the mountain itself was grinding its teeth. Byron pressed his palm flat against the wall. The vibration traveled through the concrete and into his bones. His troop leader's voice came back to him, clear as a bell. When the ground talks, you listen, and when it shakes, you run. He stepped outside. The service road was already a river. Somewhere up the mountain he heard a sound like a freight train, earth giving way. Trees snapped, rocks cracked. The entire south face of Mount Harlan was coming apart. Byron pulled on his shoes, grabbed his jacket, ran. The main building was 200 yards away. He covered it in under a minute, burst through the service entrance into the back hallway. Emergency lights cast red across the corridor. He could hear it before he reached the lobby. Screaming, glass breaking, the deep moan of wood and steel bending under pressure. The lobby was chaos. Water poured through the front entrance, not a trickle, a wall of brown, muddy water pushing through the doors like a living thing. Guests scrambled onto furniture. A woman clutched a toddler and screamed for help. An elderly couple held onto each other by the fireplace, knee-deep and rising. Staff members ran in every direction without purpose. Owen stood behind the front desk, phone in hand, pressing buttons that connected to nothing. A server slipped on the wet marble and hit her head on the edge of the concierge desk. Blood mixed with the muddy water. Nobody stopped to help her. "The road is gone," someone shouted from the second-floor balcony. "There's no way out." Byron stood in the doorway and took it in. The front was blocked by debris. The east wing had collapsed. The west parking lot was underwater. There was only one way: north, through the forest, up the ridge and down the other side to the county road. Byron had hiked that route 11 times with his scout troop. He knew every switchback, every rock formation. He knew where the ground was granite and where it turned to clay. The old fire trail connected to Route 9 4 miles north. Nobody else in this building had any idea it existed. 4 miles through dense forest in the dark, with people who had never hiked a day in their lives. Some elderly, some in bathrobes. But staying meant waiting for the water to decide. And Byron had learned one thing: the mountain doesn't negotiate. Byron pushed through the crowd toward Owen. "Mr. Reed." Owen looked up. His face was white. His hands were shaking. "Byron? What are you? You're supposed to be." "There's a trail through the North Forest. It leads to Route 9, 4 miles. I've hiked it dozens of times." "A trail? In this? It's a landslide out there." "The north slope is granite. It doesn't slide. The clay is on the south and east faces. The north trail sits on bedrock. I know the route." Owen stared at him. The water was at his shins now. "We don't have another option, Mr. Reed." Owen looked at the lobby, at the screaming guests, at the water creeping up the staircase. Then he looked back at Byron, the dishwasher he'd fired 8 hours ago. "What do you need?" Byron didn't hesitate. "Flashlights, every one you have. Rain jackets from the gift shop, first aid kit, blankets, and I need everyone who can walk gathered by the north service door in 10 minutes. Owen nodded. For the first time all day, he moved with purpose. Byron turned to the crowd. 3 months of whispering, "Yes, sir," and picking up napkins off the floor. He didn't whisper now. "Listen to me." His voice cut through the noise like a blade. "The road is gone. The water is rising. But there is a way out. I know a trail through the North Forest that leads to the county road. If you can walk, follow me. If you can't, we'll carry you. We leave in 10 minutes, not 11, 10. The lobby went quiet. Every face turned toward him. The woman with the toddler, the elderly couple, the servers who had watched him pick up a $100 bill off the floor last night. Owen, the head chef standing in the kitchen doorway, and Gerald Hammond. Gerald stood on the second step of the grand staircase, one hand gripping the railing. His charcoal overcoat was soaked through. His silver hair was matted to his forehead. His face, the face that had never heard the word no, was gray. Not angry, not commanding, gray. The color of a man who had just realized that money couldn't stop water. He stared at Byron, the kitchen boy, the dishwasher, the one he'd had fired so he wouldn't have to look at him. One of Gerald's associates, the one who had laughed at the $100 bill joke, stepped forward. "We're following him? The kitchen help?" The elderly woman by the fireplace looked at him. Her voice was steady. "He's the only one here who isn't screaming, so yes, we follow him." The associate opened his mouth, closed it, looked at the water rising past his ankles, and sat down on the staircase to tie his shoes. Byron didn't wait for more debate. He turned toward the north service door and started moving. Behind him, he heard footsteps. 1 pair, then 5, then 15. For the first time in 3 months, Byron Taylor wasn't invisible. The North Service door opened onto a gravel path that disappeared into the tree line. Rain came sideways. Byron held the one working flashlight and aimed it at the ground. Single file, step where I step, nobody falls behind. He put the woman with the toddler directly behind him, the elderly couple next, then Owen and the server with the gash on her forehead. Gerald Hammond walked at the back, alone. He had refused the rain jacket, refused to hold anyone's hand. His fists clenched at his sides, jaw set, eyes on the ground. Twice his leather shoes slipped on the wet gravel. Twice he caught himself against a tree trunk without making a sound. The forest swallowed them within seconds. The canopy blocked the worst of the rain, but dripped steadily from every branch. The ground was soft but firm, granite underneath, just like Byron had promised. The air smelled like wet pine and turned earth. For the first 10 minutes, nobody spoke. The only sounds were boots on gravel, rain on leaves, and the occasional stumble followed by a sharp gasp. The toddler had stopped crying. He pressed his face into his mother's neck and was silent. Byron counted steps. He remembered landmarks, the split boulder at the 200-yard mark, the fallen oak at the quarter-mile. Both were where he remembered them. The trail was holding. Behind him, 15 people walked in a line through the dark, trusting a man who 12 hours ago wasn't allowed in the dining room. The first creek crossing was half a mile ahead. Byron could already hear it, louder than it should have been. He kept walking. The mountain rumbled behind them, a reminder. The creek was the first test. What used to be a shin-deep trickle across flat stones was now a chest-high torrent of brown water churning with debris. The crossing point he knew was completely submerged. "We can't cross that." Owen's voice came from behind. Flat, final. Byron aimed the flashlight downstream, then upstream. 50 yards to the right, a massive pine had fallen across the creek. Its trunk was thick, wide enough to walk on if you had balance and dry shoes. Nobody here had either. "We go over that tree," Byron said. "That's insane." "That's the only way." Byron went first. He climbed onto the trunk, one hand gripping a branch stub, the other holding the flashlight between his teeth. The bark was slick. The water roared beneath him, close enough to spray his legs. He made it across in 40 steps and jammed the flashlight into the mud on the far bank so it pointed back, lighting the way. The wind hit him on the far bank, colder than the rain. His shirt clung to his chest and the air went right through it. He could feel his body temperature dropping. It didn't matter. 13 people were waiting on the other side. Then he went back, across the trunk again, to help them one at a time. The woman with the toddler went next. Byron held her arm the entire way. Short, steady words. 5 more steps. Don't look down. 4. 3. You're there. The elderly couple went together. The man's grip on Byron's wrist was so tight it left bruises. Owen crossed next, half carrying the server whose forehead was still bleeding. She stumbled at the midpoint. Owen caught her. Byron caught Owen. 3 bodies on a wet log over black water. They made it. One by one, he walked them across. 14 trips back and forth. The cuts on his hands from gripping the rough bark opened and bled, but he didn't stop. Gerald Hammond was last. He stood on the bank, staring at the trunk. The water thundered below. His charcoal overcoat was heavy with rain. His face was the color of ash. "Give me your hand, Mr. Hammond." Gerald didn't move. His jaw was clenched so tight Byron could see the muscle jumping beneath his skin. "I'm not—" Gerald's voice cracked. He cleared his throat. "I can do it myself." He stepped onto the trunk. 2 steps in, his leather sole slipped. He pitched sideways, arms flailing. Byron lunged. He grabbed Gerald by the collar and hauled him back onto the center of the trunk. For 3 seconds, they stood there. Gerald's back against Byron's chest, Byron's arms locked around him, the water screaming beneath their feet. "Let go of me!" Gerald's voice was a whisper, not angry, ashamed. Byron let go. He stepped back. "Follow my feet. Left, right, left. Don't rush." They crossed together. Gerald's hands were shaking so badly he couldn't grip the branch stubs. Byron walked behind him the whole way, close enough to catch him if he slipped again. He didn't touch him. He just stayed close. The group pressed on. The trail climbed steeply after the creek, switchbacking up a ridge. The wind cut through wet clothes like a blade. Gerald struggled on the incline. His shoes had no grip. He fell twice in 10 minutes, once onto his knees, once flat on his face in the mud. The first time, Byron reached down. Gerald slapped his hand away. "I said, don't touch me." Byron pulled his hand back, said nothing. The second time, Gerald fell hard. He lay in the mud for a long moment. His breathing was ragged. When he finally looked up, Byron was standing over him with an outstretched hand. Gerald took it. Byron pulled him up. Gerald's hand was ice cold, the grip of a man who had nothing left but the hand in front of him. They were halfway up the ridge when the mountainside moved again. A deep, grinding crack echoed through the forest, rocks breaking loose from the slope above them. "Down!" Byron shouted. "Everyone against the uphill side! Grab a tree!" People scattered. The woman with the toddler threw herself against a thick pine. Owen pulled the server behind a boulder. The elderly couple dropped flat and covered their heads. Gerald froze. He stood in the middle of the trail, looking up at the slope where shadows of falling rock grew larger by the second. Byron didn't think. He sprinted 3 steps and threw his body over Gerald's, driving them both to the ground behind a fallen log. The impact knocked the air from his lungs. Half a second later, rocks crashed around them. One the size of a basketball struck Byron's upper back. The sound it made was wrong, a wet, heavy thud that vibrated through his entire body. Pain exploded from his shoulder blade to his spine, white-hot, blinding. Byron's vision went black at the edges. He could feel Gerald underneath him, shaking, breathing in short, panicked bursts. The rockfall lasted 8 seconds. It felt like 8 minutes. Then silence. Just the rain, just the wind, just 15 people breathing. Byron rolled off Gerald. His left arm wouldn't work. He used his right to push himself up. Something warm ran down his back. Blood. A lot of it. He didn't have time to find out what was broken. Gerald sat up. He looked at Byron, at the blood spreading across the back of his jacket, at the rock that had hit him, now resting 2 feet away. "You," Gerald's voice broke. "Why did you?" Byron stood. His jaw was set. His face was gray with pain. He picked up the flashlight from where it had fallen and aimed it up the trail. "We keep moving. Another 1.5 miles." He walked, 1 foot in front of the other, blood running down his back, left arm hanging loose, the flashlight beam trembling in his right hand. Behind him, Gerald Hammond stood up slowly. He looked at the rock. He looked at the blood on the ground where Byron had been lying. Then he followed. The group moved in silence. Every person watched Byron's back, the dark stains spreading across his jacket. Nobody asked if he was okay. They could see the answer. They stopped at the top of the ridge, a flat clearing among the pines, sheltered from the wind by a natural wall of rock. Byron checked the ground. Dry. Granite. Safe enough for a rest. The woman with the toddler collapsed against a tree. The child was asleep. Owen helped the server sit down and pressed a fresh cloth against her forehead. The elderly couple sat together, holding hands, saying nothing. The head chef opened the first aid kit and started cleaning cuts. Byron leaned against a rock and closed his eyes. Just for a second. The pain in his back had settled into a deep, constant throb, the kind that lived beneath the muscles and radiated with every breath. His shirt was wet with blood from the collar to the waist. "Let me look at that." The head chef stood in front of him with gauze and tape from the kit. "I'm fine." "You're bleeding through your jacket. Sit down." Byron sat. The chef lifted his jacket and shirt. The silence that followed told Byron everything he needed to know. "How bad?" "Bad enough that you shouldn't be walking." The chef pressed gauze against the wound and taped it tight. "You need a hospital." "I need to get these people off this mountain first." The chef didn't argue. He taped another layer of gauze and stepped back. Byron was checking the flashlight batteries when Gerald sat down beside him, not across from him, not standing over him, beside him, on the same wet rock, close enough that Byron could hear him breathing. For a long time, neither of them spoke. "How do you know this mountain so well?" Gerald's voice was quiet, stripped of everything Byron had heard in it before, the authority, the contempt, the casual cruelty. What was left sounded tired and small. "Boy Scouts. I spent 4 years hiking these trails, every weekend, every summer. I earned my Eagle Scout rank on this mountain." Eagle Scout. Gerald repeated it like he was hearing the words for the first time. "I was supposed to go to college on a scholarship, environmental science, full ride to state." Byron paused. "Then my mother died, and my little sister got sick." "Sick how?" "Hole in her heart. She's 9. She needs surgery we can't afford. So I dropped out and took the dishwashing job." Byron's voice was steady. No bitterness, no accusation, just fact. "Her name is Lily. She's the reason I'm up at 4 every morning. She's the reason I picked your $100 off the floor. She asked me this morning if I was coming home today. I told her soon." Gerald said nothing for a long time. The rain had slowed to a drizzle. Somewhere below them, the creek roared. "The money I threw on the floor," Gerald said. "The $100. I picked it up." "I know you did." Another silence, longer than the first. "I got you fired." Gerald wasn't asking, he was stating it, like he needed to say it out loud to believe it. "I had you fired because I didn't want to look at you, and then you—" He stopped, looked at Byron's back, at the blood-soaked gauze. "You threw yourself on top of me." Byron didn't respond right away. He adjusted the gauze on his hand where the bark had torn the skin. Then he looked at Gerald, not with anger, not with pity, just looked at him. "My troop leader used to say something. First rule of the trail, you don't leave people behind. Doesn't matter if they're your friend, doesn't matter if they're a stranger, doesn't matter if they're the person who just fired you." "Why?" Gerald's voice cracked on the single syllable. "Why would you help me? After what I did?" Byron was quiet for a moment. The wind moved through the pines above them. "Because you're a person. That's enough." Gerald looked down at his hands. They were shaking. Something inside him had come loose. A wall he had spent 63 years building, made of money and power and the certainty that the world was divided into people who mattered and people who didn't. The napkin on the floor. The plate sent back 3 times. The word boy. Every small cruelty replayed behind his eyes. He had spent his whole life being the most powerful man in every room. Tonight, he was the weakest. A 20-year-old dishwasher had put a crack in that wall. Byron stood up. The pain almost put him back down. He steadied himself against the rock and aimed the flashlight down the far side of the ridge. 1.5 miles to the road. "Let's go." He didn't look back to see if Gerald was following. He didn't need to. He could hear him, right behind him, step for step. Dawn came gray and cold. The tree line ended at a gravel shoulder along Route 9. Byron saw the road first, a strip of wet asphalt cutting through the fog. He stopped, turned around, counted heads. 15. All 15. The woman with the toddler sat down on the gravel and started crying. Not from sadness, from relief. The elderly man kissed his wife's forehead. Owen leaned against a guardrail and put his face in his hands. The head chef stood in the rain and looked up at the sky like he'd never expected to see it again. Byron stood at the edge of the road. His left arm hung useless. The blood on his back had dried and soaked fresh again. His legs were shaking. His body was done. Headlights cut through the fog. 2 fire trucks, an ambulance, a sheriff's cruiser. The paramedics reached the group in seconds. A third walked toward Byron. "Sir, are you injured?" "I'm fine. Check the others first." "Sir, there's blood all over your—" Byron's legs gave out. He went down on one knee, then the other. The gravel bit into his skin. The paramedic caught him before he hit the ground. "We need a stretcher here." The paramedic cut Byron's jacket open. The gauze the chef had taped was soaked red. Underneath, the wound ran from his left shoulder blade to the middle of his spine, a deep gash where the rock had split the skin. The paramedic looked at his partner. He walked 4 miles like this? The partner shook his head. He didn't just walk, he carried people. The last thing Byron saw before his vision went dark was Gerald Hammond's face, standing 10 feet away, mouth open, no sound coming out. Byron woke in a hospital bed. White ceiling, fluorescent lights, the smell of antiseptic and clean sheets. His left arm was in a sling. His back was wrapped so tight it hurt to breathe. A nurse stood beside the bed, adjusting an IV line. "Where am I?" "Mercy General, you've been out for 6 hours. Fractured scapula and 2 cracked ribs. You lost a lot of blood." She paused. "You're very lucky." Byron closed his eyes. Lucky. "I need to call my grandmother." The nurse brought him a phone. He dialed Edna's number. It rang 5 times. 6. 7. "Hello?" Edna's voice was thin, stretched, like a rubber band about to snap. "Grandma, it's me. I'm okay." "Byron? Oh, Lord, Byron. They said on the news, the resort, they said people were trapped." "I'm okay. I'm in the hospital, but I'm okay. How's Lily?" The pause lasted too long. "Grandma? She had another episode last night. They took her to the ER. She's here at Mercy General, 3rd floor." Edna's voice dropped to a whisper. "The doctors say she can't wait much longer. Her heart, Byron, they're saying days, not weeks." "I'm here too. I'm in this hospital. What room?" "Room 312. Byron looked at the IV in his arm. He looked at the sling. He looked at the nurse. "I need to get to the 3rd floor." "Sir, you can't. My sister is in room 312. She's 9 years old and she has a hole in her heart. I need to see her." The nurse looked at him for a long moment. Then she brought a wheelchair. 2 floors below, Gerald Hammond sat in the hospital waiting room. He had refused treatment. A few bruises, nothing that mattered. He had watched them load Byron into the ambulance. He had stood in the rain on Route 9 after everyone else had been taken away, standing in the exact spot where Byron's knees had buckled, looking at the small smear of blood on the gravel. His associates were gone. 43 missed calls from his office. He hadn't returned a single one. Owen Reed sat across from him. Neither of them had spoken since the ambulance. Gerald stared at the floor for 30 minutes before he finally looked up. "When did you fire him?" Owen blinked. "Yesterday afternoon, around 3. "And the last shuttle off the mountain?" 3 o'clock. "So he had no way to leave?" "No, sir. He stayed because he couldn't afford a cab." Owen nodded. Gerald leaned forward, elbows on his knees, hands clasped in front of his face. "If I hadn't gotten him fired, he would have been on that 3 o'clock shuttle. He would have been 40 miles away when the landslide hit." Owen said nothing. There was nothing to say. "And we would all be dead." The words sat in the air between them. Gerald stared at his clasped hands, the hands that had dropped a $100 bill on a marble floor, the hands that had signed the complaint. Those same hands were the reason Byron was still on the mountain when the earth gave way. Gerald's cruelty had saved his own life. The irony was so precise, it felt like punishment. A reporter from the local news station arrived at 10 that morning. The story was already spreading. A young man had led 15 people to safety through the forest. The reporter wanted names. Owen gave them. By noon, it was on every local channel. By evening, it was national. Resort disaster. Black kitchen worker saves 15 lives after being fired hours earlier. The headline hit Gerald like a physical blow. He read it on the waiting room television. Every detail was there. The firing, the reason, the $100 bill. An unnamed staff member had talked, then another. The comments section was flooding. Thousands of strangers calling Byron a hero. Thousands more calling Gerald a monster. The internet was doing what it always did, turning a complicated night into a simple story. But Gerald knew it wasn't simple. He knew it was worse than they imagined. Gerald stood up. He walked to the elevator and pressed the button for the 3rd floor. He found Byron's grandmother first. Edna was sitting in a plastic chair outside room 312, her hands folded in her lap, her eyes red. She was small, barely 5 feet, in a coat too thin for the weather. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. "Ma'am, my name is Gerald Hammond. Your grandson saved my life last night." Edna looked up at him. She studied his face the way people study faces when they're too tired for pretense. "Are you the one who fired him?" Gerald's mouth went dry. "Yes, ma'am." Edna nodded, slowly, like she was confirming something she already knew. Then she looked back at the door to room 312. "Lily's in there. She can't breathe right. The doctors say she needs surgery this week or—" Her voice broke. She pressed her hand over her mouth. The rest of the sentence disappeared into her palm. Gerald looked through the small window in the door. Inside, Byron sat in a wheelchair beside a bed. A little girl, thin, pale, oxygen tube in her nose, wires running to a monitor that beeped too fast. A stuffed bear missing one eye sat on her pillow. She was holding Byron's right hand with both of hers. She was smiling. Byron was smiling too. The first time Gerald had ever seen him smile. This was the girl worth picking $100 off a marble floor. Gerald stepped back from the window. He leaned against the wall, pressed his hands flat against it. And for the first time in as long as he could remember, Gerald Hammond cried. Not for himself. For the first time in 63 years, not for himself. Gerald made the call that afternoon. He picked up the hospital phone, called the chief of pediatric cardiology, and said 6 words. "The girl in 312. Fix her." The surgeon's office called back within the hour. Lily's surgery was scheduled for Monday morning. Full coverage, no questions. It wasn't enough. Gerald sat in the waiting room and wrote a list on the back of a hospital napkin. His own handwriting. No assistant, no letterhead. Just a man and a napkin and a pen. Full scholarship to State University, Environmental Science. Byron's original program. Books, housing, everything. A 3-bedroom apartment for Edna. Close to the university. Close to Lily's follow-up care. Lease in Edna's name. A trust fund for Lily's medical expenses. Not a one-time payment, ongoing, until she turned 18 and beyond. He folded the napkin and walked to Byron's room. Byron was awake. His back was propped on pillows. His left arm was still in the sling. The IV was still running. Gerald walked in and sat in the chair beside the bed. "I spoke to the surgeon. Lily's operation is Monday." Byron stared at him. "What?" "It's covered, all of it." "Mr. Hammond, I can't." "You can, and you will." Gerald set the napkin on the bed. Byron unfolded it with one hand, read it again. His jaw tightened. His eyes filled. He didn't blink. He refused to. "This isn't charity, Byron." Gerald's voice was low, steady, the steadiest it had been since the mountain. "I owe you a debt I will never repay. You saved 15 lives. You saved mine. And you did it after I took everything from you." He paused. "The man I threw away saved everything I have." Byron looked at the napkin, at the handwriting, at the word scholarship written in the shaky script of a man whose hands hadn't stopped trembling since last night. "Why a napkin?" Byron asked. Gerald almost smiled. It felt appropriate. Byron exhaled, a sound that was half laugh, half sob. He extended his right hand. Gerald took it. Not the handshake of a billionaire closing a deal. Not the grip of a man giving charity. 2 hands, equal pressure, eye to eye. Outside the room, Edna stood by the window with her palm pressed against the glass, watching her grandson shake hands with the man who had thrown a napkin at his feet 24 hours ago. She didn't understand all of it, but she understood enough. By the end of the week, a GoFundMe page appeared, not from Gerald, but from strangers who had read the paramedic's quote. He walked 4 miles with a fractured scapula. He carried people. The fund raised $200,000 in 3 days. Messages poured in from teachers, scouts, dishwashers, people who had been told their whole lives that they didn't belong in the dining room. 1 year later, Byron Taylor walked across the campus of State University with a backpack over his right shoulder. His left shoulder still ached when the weather changed, a reminder from Mount Harlan. He was studying emergency management now. He'd changed his major the week he enrolled. Lily was running again. Not fast. The doctor said it would take time. but running. Down the hallway of their new apartment, through the park, into Byron's arms every Friday when he came home. The hole in her heart was closed. The stuffed bear with one eye still sat on her pillow. Edna planted flowers on the balcony. She said it was the first home where the ceiling didn't leak. Gerald Hammond never spoke publicly about that night, but his employees noticed. New policies at Crestline Properties, a respect program, a scholarship fund for hospitality workers, and a framed photograph in his office that no one was allowed to ask about. A kid in a blood-soaked kitchen uniform holding a flashlight in the rain. Some people find out who they are when they have everything. Byron Taylor found out who he was when he had nothing. If this story made you feel something, leave a comment. Tell us about a time kindness found you when you least expected it. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And subscribe so you never miss a story. Yo, be good to people who don't deserve it from. Not 'cause they earned it, 'cause that's just who you are. The world will teach you to match energy. Don't. One day your kindness toward an enemy might be the only thing between them and death.